Hey everybody, thank you for joining. This is Kurt's first time doing a podcast. Actually, Kurt, before we get into it, how many episodes are you at? 500? What's the count
Oh,
now?
jeez. It's at least 500 because one day I got froggy and I decided to delete at least 100 episodes that I was just like, I don't like these anymore. I just
Whoa.
killed 100 old episodes, which of course then now I have no idea what my actual total download numbers are because I deleted the historical analytics along with the
Just
episodes.
add a couple billion and we'll go from there.
Yeah. I just like round up to 3 million now. I'm like, that sounds good.
I like it. This is quite a treat for me. Kurt and I are new. I'm going to say friends. I don't know how you feel about me, but I've known Arvind for a very, very long time. You're one of those entrepreneurs who, like I've always described you as a metronome. Like every time we would check in, it's like the business is better, the business is better, the team is better, the product is better, customers like us more. And it was never you're selling me. I'm not like a stakeholder in the business, so there was nothing there. Um, and I asked you, hey, I'm suckering you into having a chat with me. Who should we bring on? And you said Kurt. So, Arvind, I want to start with you. I want to start with you giving like a proper intro to yourself, your background, Swym, what you guys do. And I'll pull some thread and then I'm going to sucker you into telling me why Kurt. And then Kurt, we'll do the same with you. So, Arvind, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Definitely an honor and a privilege to be both, friends for as long as we've been, and that you invited me on here. I think we met. It was back in 2017. I know we were at Techstars, and Peshman introduced us, and I think he introduced us because you were a merchant at that time, and he said, "I know somebody that might be able to give you good feedback on what you're building," and that's how I reached out. And thankfully for me, we hit it off, and it's been I've gotten tons of good advice, but I've also found an amazing friend. So thank you for that. And when you asked me to come on this LinkedIn Live, and you said, "Who else can you think of that has been around in the Shopify ecosystem in e-commerce for as long as you have?" Which is I've been around for a long time, but if there's somebody that's been there longer and who I looked up to when I first got started, Kurt was one of the first names that came to mind. And I think Kurt, I don't know if you remember, but I bumped into you. I think it was also maybe 2017, but at Unite was the first time, and you were one of those people that I'd seen on the Shopify website, and so it was someday I hope I can talk to Kurt. And then you actually came over, said hello, and asked me what we did at Swym. And it was a very brief conversation, but it did leave a solid impression of what a class act you are. And I think I've learned a lot. I'm as seasoned as you are with podcasts, in the sense that I've listened to as many podcasts as you've done, and learned a lot. And so when Aaron asked me for a name, that was the first one that came to mind. But just a quick introduction, Aaron. I think Swym has been a part of my journey, my life, since 2012 now. And we actually didn't start on Shopify. We came to Shopify in 2016 and been primarily on Shopify since then. But we're a customer engagement platform that enables brands and merchants to better understand shopper intent on their storefronts and their physical stores, and then tailor the experience that those customers get based on that intent. We started with the broader scope, and I'm sure we'll get into it over the course of the conversation. But prior to that, I spent about 10 years at Microsoft and another 5 years at Yahoo, in the digital ad space, and came to do something that was closer to consumers, and that's how I got started. And it's been a very exciting and fulfilling journey that I'm extremely thankful for, and get to do a bunch of fun things with some very fun people at Swym. But that's the quick background. So, Kurt, I'll hand it over to you for your intro.
Yeah. Kurt, please take it away.
Yeah, I don't know how I followed that up. My head is like too big to fit in frame now.
He did say he likes you. He said he was impressed with you back in the day. That's
Yeah, Arvind, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we covered the high points. I've been a Shopify partner for 13 or 14 years now. We've worked on Shopify exclusively for over 10 years. You're one of the first Shopify experts, primarily doing theme dev, strategy work, support for merchants. We have a few apps, nothing nearly as successful as Arvind's. And, best known for hosting the Unofficial Shopify Podcast. It's in the top 0.5% of podcasts now. And a lot of that is just the consistency. I've published it every Tuesday since 2014. There's power in that.
It's nuts, man. All right, I'm gonna linger here for a little bit because I got 400 follow-up questions. How do you split your time? Is there at this point a grand strategy with what you're doing, or is it just like kind of every day's different? Yeah, what's your routine?
Man, I wish I was more intentional about my routine. Like when I sit down and I block everything out in my calendar like a week out, that feels really good. You know, but no, the reality is it's a little bit vibes based, but I know how many, I have to churn out a podcast every Tuesday. And so I just want to be ahead on it. And so it's like, okay, I always want to have 4 episodes recorded and then, other people edit them. But, I still enjoy going out and finding the guests. I still enjoy, preparing the interviews, doing the podcast. Like I do all of that. And so it, that's a few hours a week. And then the rest of it really, I'm just so focused on doing the work on the client work. We're a small team, but my why is enabling entrepreneurs. And I think if you have, in any career in your life, if you have a why, it really helps ground you and keep you sane. And for me, it's like with Shopify, the Shopify ecosystem and Shopify as a partner, just being there, allows me to enable entrepreneurship. And so that's what's kept me sane. That's what's prevented me from burning out after, over a decade of this.
I love it. Well, you haven't turned gray and you haven't lost all your hair, so like this is of
A
the
little
three of us,
gray,
you've
starting
done
to
a
turn.
little bit, but it's like it's a good gray. Um, I kind of want to follow up a little bit because you mentioned that you guys have built some apps as well, and obviously this will dovetail a little bit into Swim. But when you're choosing not just to do the client work, right, but you're actually starting to build something, what I don't know, what drives you to do that? Is it, hey, we actually want to be in the ecosystem so we feel it? Have you ever like built an app and then deprecated it because you saw something better? Or like how do you think about that side of the house?
Sure. Well, I think it was we were doing theme development work, and you're one on one with merchants who are like, "Hey, I've got this idea, or there's this thing I want to do," and of our apps, really like I would I would discontinue all but one of them, but there's still people using them, and they're it's still profitable to run it, so I leave them. But we got this app Crowdfunder that that's the big one, that's the successful one that adds a Kickstarter style crowdfunding widget to a product page. But it came out of a merchant who came to us years ago and said, "Hey, we would love to be able to make a pre-order sales page that kind of replicates the Kickstarter experience. Do you think you could do it?" We're like, "Oh, I don't know how you would even do that." And we figured out how to do it in Liquid, just an entirely Shopify Liquid solution. And once we had that, we said, well, other people might find value in this. Maybe, we should turn it into an app. Can you add a front end to it? Can you automate the stuff? And it turned out you could. And then, the Shopify ecosystem evolved. So you just have to stay with it and stay ahead of it. But with that one, fairly niche thing. And so it was successful and worked. The other apps, we took the same approach, but they weren't as involved, they weren't as unique, and I think that that was the issue with those, that they made enough money to keep around but not enough to be
Got it.
interesting.
That's helpful. Thanks. Arvind, your entire life is building amazing apps, not just for Shopify, right? As you kind of mentioned. I'm curious, what was the like founding narrative and what is the business today, right? You gave the high level, but what are you building? What are the core apps? Why those apps? What's next? Yeah, take this.
Um, Firstly, I feel attacked, Aaron, because you complimented Kurt on his hair, and you said he hasn't lost his hair. So I
I
will. I
was
will.
talking, I didn't, I was talking about a buddy, a different friend, different friend.
I know. Um, so I think we got started back in 2012, like I said, and it was actually not my first choice, to be honest with you. I was quite happy, in my corporate career. A good friend of mine, we'd worked together, in a previous life, and he convinced me to, get off that very cushy corporate chair and start something together. We actually didn't know what we were going to go build. We just knew that we were very passionate about the consumer experience and trying to figure out. And I had come from the advertising world and was tired of building software that wasn't quite, consumer facing. And so that's how we got started. We tinkered around with a bunch of ideas. And when we finally landed on Commerce Squarely, we actually started with Magento. And the idea was, mobile starting to become, quite prevalent. It is going to be the device of choice. And The take on personalization was primarily around product discovery and figuring out what was relevant for you. We saw that as a slightly different problem. In our heads, it was, you're on a journey, and that journey keeps getting interrupted because you're context switching, and the burden is on the consumer to figure out where I had paused and how I pick up where I left off. And so the tagline of the company was literally pick up where you left off when we got started. And Magento was the platform at that time, Magento was the cool kid, around the block. And so that's where we got started. Built it out to be a fairly comprehensive, how do we enable continuity in the journey platform? And the wish list happened to be a key feature in that story. And go to market was tough. Customer acquisition was way harder in terms of the time it took, et cetera. And Shopify was starting to take off, and it had all the characteristics of the platform that we were looking for. And so we said, okay, let's actually double down on Shopify. And when we did that, it turned out that the first version of the app, which at that time was called Swym Relay, and the idea behind Relay was you relay from one session to the next, and it carries your context forward. It was too complicated for Shopify, and so we launched the app, and crickets. And we were not the best at marketing. We still aren't. We're still learning. And one light bulb moment, it was, what, maybe we should dumb this down. Maybe we should just call it the Wishlist, and Wishlist wasn't allowed, so we coined it Wishlist Plus. So it was very creative, and the thing took off. Within, I think, 2 weeks of making that change, we had more customers than we'd ever had, and I think by the time we finished that first year, we were already at 1,000 customers, all completely inbound, completely organic, including a lot of Plus brands. And so we knew we were onto something. Figured out, how to do customer support. That was actually our not so secret sauce at the beginning, and figuring out how to make sure that you listen to feedback and build based on what that feedback was telling you. We made some in hindsight some premature choices around multiple apps, and now we're almost unwinding that path to consolidate a lot of that into one platform. And so Wishlist Plus is becoming more of a just capture shopper intent as it happens. Like any interaction that happens in your store, how do we make it easy for you to capture? How do we make it easy for you to then take that context and then either remarket to those customers, engage them in personalized fashion? Like all of that are offshoots of that foundation. But we're still known as the Wishlist Plus app. But as merchants start to engage, they recognize that, okay, there's a lot more going on here, and there's, in terms of depth of context, we scale all the way from small stores that launched today to at the high end. We have brands doing billions in sales that are using us for some pretty sophisticated use cases. So that's been the fun part. A lot of it actually has come inbound, and it's been very gratifying. But the scope has largely been led by customers and insights that customers have given us.
Arvind, in 2020, there's this trend of we just started calling pricing plans brand names plus, Disney Plus, whatever plus. You take credit for this trend with Wishlist Plus.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kurt. But and Aaron knows this very well, because I remember talking to him about this in 2017. We didn't know how to price Wishlist Plus. And for the longest time, therefore, it was free because we just didn't know what to charge for it. And the very first pricing attempt was $9.99 a month. And we thought, oh man, are people going to pay $10 a month for this? And one thing led to another, and every increase in price, and I'm sure you've seen this too, in your journey, you're always nervous, you're always tentative. Is this, like, what is the feedback going to be? And I think it took us a while to become very secure in the fact that value is what you lead with, and as long as that value is there, then to be able to charge a fair price for that is something that most customers are okay with, most reasonable customers are okay with. But it's funny you mentioned the pricing bit. It took us a long time to figure pricing out.
It's still too inexpensive for what it's worth. This is Arvind's number one weakness.
Do you still have a free plan?
Yeah, we do.
Does the support on a free plan ever make you crazy?
Actually, no. And I think, people ask me all the time, what is your moat? Like, why do you, after all, it's just a wishlist app, how defensible is it? And I go back to our
just
customer.
A wishlist app, as if that's easy to make.
It's just a hard button right on the product page. We do, Kurt, about 100 customer conversations a day. So over the course of the year, we do about 35,000 customer conversations. And the value of the insights we get from these conversations and then what it leads to downstream, both for those customers in terms of expanding the scope, but also strategically from a product roadmap perspective, it's very, very hard to get that scale of insight and that quality of insight anyplace else, right? And so for me, the free plan isn't just about app store placement and ranking and all of that and becoming a great inbound engine. It's also just from a strategic product focus perspective, it's just been incredibly valuable. And lots of agencies, lots of plus merchants, the percentage of plus merchants that are sitting on a free plan and have been on a free plan for God knows how long, it just blows my mind every time I look at it. But someday they will, when the timing is right, they'll come in and suddenly they'll be one of our more valuable customers. So I have no intentions whatsoever of ever getting off that free plan bit.
Yeah, I always go back and forth on free plans, right? Because you now have a negative cost of goods sold potentially, where you're supporting this thing, you have the hosting cost, the continued development cost on it, and potentially getting nothing in return on that customer. A customer who stays free has a negative lifetime value for you. And
So I think I disagree. I think it depends. You could have a ton of free customers. How I'm interpreting what Arvind is saying is he has the best voice of the customer mechanism possible. And so he is hearing from a diverse set of customers, big companies, small companies, different verticals, different geographies, people who sell high price stuff, low price stuff. Now the question is like the Swym team. And I think this is why I think they're like a metronome, because I actually think this is probably, and I never got it, frankly, until this call, is like they are we understand customers better than anybody else company. And if you do that and you actually know how to mechanize that, then the small guys who aren't paying you anything, or even if they would pay you $6, it's still going to be it's not going to be enough to really cover, like make a dent on things, allow you to build the differentiated product in this ecosystem where like there are a ton of Wishlist equivalent products that popped up over the years, but there's a reason that Swym is far and away ahead. So I think it depends on like if you do the work to understand the customer. I don't know if that resonates, but
Yeah,
I'm inspired.
it also forces a couple of things, right? And I don't think either one of these is obvious. It certainly wasn't obvious to me when we got started. One, on the engineering side, one of our metrics that we watch very closely is what is our operational cost per customer, like per install. And so we're constantly motivated to push that number further and further down until the unit economics start to become viable. Where, Kurt, to your point, it is a very real cost, especially as you scale. I mean, today, our free base is about 35,000 merchants, and some of those merchants have very real traffic. And so you do want to make sure that you are able to support that operationally. So that's one that I think gives us an engineering advantage over time because of that scale. And we literally have to make that a priority, because if we don't, the economics wouldn't be viable. But the other, I think, little known secret is the agency relationships that come in, right? And a lot of the agencies aren't willing to pay. So either you have to figure out how to recognize that they're an agency and give them like an affiliate plan where you don't charge them, or you just say, you know what, like take the free plan and we'll give you everything you need. We've built some incredible agency relationships on the back of that. And I think the agencies recognize very quickly, working with our support team, that, oh, you know what, like the customer empathy comes through and these guys are partner minded and they are customer first. And then it just becomes you don't have to sell anything, right? Because they're already convinced that you are on the same side. And I think that we didn't, to be completely fair, it wasn't like a strategic, insight or anything that we built that with. We just were doing what we do. And we started seeing that pattern, and then we connected the dots and say, oh, wow, this is actually incredible that this is happening organically. And so we should just keep doing more of this. And that's worked well for us, I'd say.
Kurt, when you're thinking about tech partners to work with, or like whether it's like a formal partnership or you talk to a friend, they're starting a Shopify store, they're a $10 million brand, they want to scale. Do you have like a stack of tools that you're like, oh, you should definitely use this? And
absolutely.
I want to pull out like what are the differentiators that make somebody hit that threshold. But yeah, like what are some of the, oh yeah, of course, use these guys' tools.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it depends. It's like, hey, what are the features we need? I don't want to be layering. There's a real performance cost and then a monthly cost to these apps and features, right? And so I only want what they need. So like first principles, all right, what are we trying to accomplish? Or what are the recommendations here? And then within that, generally there's going to be, for most categories, it's like I've got in mind a best-in-class app in general. And then maybe, if it's like a real niche use case, there's tools that are more specialized. And so really like, I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I want the best tool for the job. And, that's going to be a combo of like the tool itself, but also the support experience, also the documentation. Part of what really attracted us to become Shopify partners early on was, wow, this ecosystem is really well documented, right? The Shopify had excellent documentation compared to what we were used to. And so that, that could be a big part of it. And of course, like platform and extensibility and integration, sometimes just like, well, this tool is very similar to this other tool, except only one of them plays nice with the other tools that we like, right? It's like, oh, it's got this Klaviyo plugin, or, oh, it works with Flow. But no, it's largely, it's like, what's the right tool for the job? And, have we had good experiences with it?
And so you see Swym, you see Wishlists, you're like, okay, cool, right? This is great for engagement. I love this tool. But there are 50 companies that are coming for Arvind's business, right? And same way there are 50 companies that are coming for Klaviyo, and there are 50 companies coming for Loop, and like whoever those people might be. How do you learn about new tools? Like, obviously you've got the podcast, but is that like part of your mandate is, hey, we want to stay up to date? And if so, how do you do it? I want to help like anybody who's listening and thinking about building their stack. Like, I don't know, what are the trusted places to kind of get up to
Interesting.
speed?
I get so many inbound pitches, and they are so limp and so lame that any pitch comes in that's like app, tech, tool, service provider, almost universally, I skim it and mark it as spam. If it is not totally horrific, then I just archive it. I won't necessarily send you to spam.
As somebody who deals with a lot of email marketing stuff, that is painful.
Yeah, well, they're that bad.
They deserve it. I'm not arguing.
Yeah. And so really it's like, to me, it's just noise. It's all just noise. Even on social media, like if people start talking about an app, I don't trust that either, because the number of times that I've gotten a DM that's like, hey, can we pay you to recommend this thing? And for sure, these people are not like appropriately marking their promoted tweets, and I just ignore it. I don't engage with it. Yeah. So I don't trust that either. And so really it's like, all right, do we have a problem? Like I'm not chasing shiny toys anymore. It's, hey, do we have a problem here? Yes. Okay. Let's go find the best solution for that if we don't already know it. And so, I'm a problem solver. I love being presented with problems that I can run and solve. So that's usually how it starts, is like reaction to a client's needs. And then I'm going to go research it and figure it out. And that's going to be based on word of mouth, or, with our retainer clients, with, friends who are merchants. They will, if they've had a really great experience with something, they will sometimes be compelled to just be like, wow, Kurt needs to know about this. And they'll tell me, and it'll stick with me. Or if it's really cool, then I will go reach out to them and schedule that demo. But yeah, it's like, so the short answer to your question is word of mouth is really what does it.
So I actually want to build on that.
Yeah, go, please.
So a couple of questions for you, Kurt. One that's just trivia, but another that's more pointed at what you just said. So EtherCycle, I've always wondered what the origin for the name was, how you came up with it, and I think that would. I'm definitely interested in hearing that. And then the question, one thing I've always noticed listening to your podcast is, and I know now, having known you for a while and having listened to you for as long as I have, I know that this isn't something that you deliberately try to do, which is establish trust. I think it just implicitly your audience trusts you, and when you make a recommendation, I know people take that at face value and say, okay, if Kurt's saying it, there must be a lot of truth to it, and he doesn't do it, out of any vested interest. He genuinely means for this to be, applied in my context. Did you get a sense for when that happened? I'm sure the association with Shopify helped matters, but even when I knew you from very early on, you were always one of those trusted figures in the ecosystem. So how did that happen?
All right, so the agency name is easy. It was 2009. My great, brilliant business idea, with having never started a business before, was I'll go build an e-commerce platform. And at that time, I was really into cycling. I had worked in a bike shop. I am a SRAM certified bike mechanic, and I said our niche will be bike shops. And so it was and even then, domain names were like hard to get. And so EtherCycle is a portmanteau of Ethernet and bicycle, and the domain name was available. And then I never changed it. Just stuck with it, ran with it. The advantage to having a unique brand name is it that handle's always available, right? But beyond that, it's like it doesn't speak to anything, it doesn't mean anything. So that part's annoying to me. But momentum, I'm not changing it. It's good enough. The agency names are always a little silly anyway. But as to how I became this trusted authority figure, man, I don't have a filter. I have no filter. I'm just candid. And so that would be my guess, is what it starts with, right? And then later people have been like, I've been told by enough strangers that my reputation is like that I'm humble or modest. That makes my wife insane hearing that. She's like, no, you're not. They don't. She's like, that's how I know they don't know you. So I get a kick out of that. But that's what I think it is. It's like, it's practicing radical candor. When I screw up, I am the first to admit it. That helps. When I'm wrong, I'm like, okay, I was wrong on that. But yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just is practicing radical candor.
No, that's
And
awesome.
like swearing a little bit helps too. It's proven that swearing makes you more trustworthy. But as we've grown, I've tried not to swear.
No, that's awesome. I love the cycling story. I had no idea. But to your point about, I think candor, I feel like sometimes as an ecosystem, there is a lot of hyping going on, and I think you made that point very nicely. Where if something shows up too often on my Twitter timeline, I know not to trust it, and it's sad that it's turned out that way. But in that sort of an ecosystem, it's refreshing to see there are also folks that whose words carry a lot of weight, and so for what it's worth, I think that's awesome that you've not only built that reputation, but you've also maintained it for as long as you have. And I can certainly, I certainly don't know you as well as your wife does, but I do. If I think Kurt, I do think super modest, super down to earth, and given how successful you've been, it's I think you're setting a great example for the rest of us. So thank you. Definitely something that we
appreciate
all
that.
look up.
Thank you.
I love it. Arvind,
So Aaron, question
actually,
for
Kurt,
you.
what? Oh man,
I think it's fair game, right? So when I first met you, it was Modify Watches, and then I think you've touched every corner of the e-commerce technology stack. At least amongst the people I know, are and you cannot pick the current one you're on, right? Like that's not allowed. But outside of that, which would you say was your favorite stint and why?
um, that's funny. I was gonna say my brand when we met was a watch company, Kurt, and it was interchangeable watches, and so we could do like very colorful stuff. And so we struck a nerve with the cycling community. So I did thousands of watches for SRAM for like the logo. I think it was like gifts to dealers. We did watches for Pinarello and Giordana and like
Cool.
Cannondale. Yeah, we did like Levi's Grand Fondo watches. So I'll send you. I like have a archive of random old stuff. I'll find a good one for you. It definitely does not
Oh, that'd
work.
be sweet.
I don't think it worked 7 years ago when we made it either. All right, Arvid, I'll try to answer quickly because I really want to get both your opinions about AI, which is going to be super annoying, but I promise not to have it be an annoying discussion. Okay, my background: I ran a brand for a while, and then I co-founded Passport that does international shipping. And at the time, I was like competitive with DHL. Now it's like think competitive with Global E, stuff like that. Still like DHL, right? Big cross-border shipping company. Um, and then I had a very weird journey where I was trying to figure out what company to start, if I was going to start, and I like started advising a bunch of companies. I ended up joining Loop full time after being an advisor there. I had a short stint at Returnly, and then like obviously Arita. And like Arvind, my relationship was a very common one for me, which is, and I just think I remember during COVID, you and I would talk probably like once every 2 weeks where I'd be like out on a walk and I just like call you And I wasn't then and I'm not now like formally involved, but I was just like, it's cool to hear how this guy is building and like, let me just like spend time with him. And I think the thing that I've always enjoyed the most was actually spending as much time as possible with founders and the builders because I learn so much that influences like how I think about building, right? I mean, very specifically with you, the first time I met you, I realized how powerful agencies could be in terms of a channel. And you made that comment earlier to Kurt, which is like, look, I'll do a lot. My interpretation is like we'll do a lot to earn trust with somebody who, if I've like genuinely earned the trust, will then introduce me to my next two, three, 500, like whatever the number of clients is. And then like I will keep fighting that good fight. And if you think about like our core value, we've got like five, but our number one value to Rita is customer and partner obsession. And it's not like parentheses partner. It's like partner isn't specifically there because like I want to build a company that is like in the center of the ecosystem. Um, my favorite times always are when I'm spending time with other people talking about their problems. It's delightful to not have to worry about mine, but to think about yours. Um, I don't know. I found a lot of joy and a lot of sleepless nights at each of my stints. That does not stop. I have a problem of when I'm working, I'm all in, just like absolutely all in on work. And so like I bring my whole self to it, especially at startups. Um, I'm sure my everybody who I work with says that I'm just a joy all the time, obviously. But
I know I do, and I think your how sincere you are certainly comes through, Aaron, and I think it's a very likable trait. So I'm not surprised, and I'm not surprised to hear you say that. Working with founders and solving problems with them is your. I was half expecting that you'd say something along those lines, so not surprised.
yeah, thank you. I mean, I was brought into Rito with like two founders who'd already built this most amazing product. And they were like clearly driving a ton of value and clearly underpricing it. And I was like, raise the price. And then like I ended up joining as kind of the third co-founder, but it's like I'm a I'm doing whatever I can to like help these guys be successful. And I feel so lucky because I'm like, yeah, we can't build a thing. Um, Kurt, I actually want to go to you very quickly, and I do want to talk about AI, but hopefully not in a super painful way. And Arvind, definitely want to hear your perspective as the builder. When you were talking about the stack, right, and like what you're like, okay, cool. Well, there are some problems. What are like the next problems that you're interested in finding a solution to, whether it's an app or just like some combination? Or what are some of the problems that have been solved, but you're like, man, AI, if you were to like build an AI native version of it, you could actually solve it so much better. So like, not that you see today, but even what do you think is going to come in the next 12 months or 18 months that's going to like upend how you build in this ecosystem?
I think for sure AI agents are the next big thing.
Okay.
Like LLMs work so well now, but they're limited to their modality, right? I'm talking to a text window or it's via API, which really is variation on the same thing, except now we made the computers talk to each other instead. With AI agent, where you can have the thing more directly controlling a web interface, there are so many jobs to be done within Shopify that suddenly, I could potentially automate a lot of the nonsense that either, staff or store owner or brand owner has to deal with on a daily basis that isn't necessarily adding value. Being able to delegate some of the smaller stuff, even if it's just like, hey, I know there's a setting where just somebody go find that setting for me in Shopify. If you're not in the admin every day, you may not know where it is.
What are a couple examples? So like that's one. Is it like improving their creative? Is it like getting better inventory information? Is it yeah, what anything else come to mind, like any
I
other
think
problem?
a good example would be analytics.
Hmm.
Google Analytics 4. People love to complain about it. GA4 is painful to use. I don't use if I need to know something in GA4, I do not go open GA4. I go ask ChatGPT. I present it with this is what I need. Do you think I can get this in GA4? And then it'll probably say yes, and here's where you would find it. And if I'm lucky it didn't hallucinate it, then I will go look for it in GA4. Well, okay, it's not that much further to say if I could do that, why can't the thing just go get the data for me and bring it back? Right? That's like the missing step is why do I have to go do this? Just let ChatGPT control my web browser. It could deal with it.
I love it. Thank you. Arvind, for you, when you're thinking about like building in this time, and you made the comment earlier where it was like a bunch of apps, and now it's kind of like there's one purpose, and like there are different parts of like being a Swym customer. Um, are you changing how you guys are building products? Are you changing your internal ways of working? Are you thinking about rebuilding any of your products and like a more AI like native approach, for lack of a better term?
100%. I think if we don't, we will get left behind. Is my absolute belief. And so, yes, I think to the UX point that Kurt made, I think we're all reimagining what interacting with software looks like, and I expect that our customers are going to do the same. I expect that consumers are going to do the same, and so uh, every time we contemplate either refining an existing capability or adding a new capability, one of the questions we certainly ask is, okay, it's not going to be the old point and click paradigm. How do we want our customers to interact with it? And do we even want them to interact with it? Do we want this to be completely, automated so that it's behind the scenes and it just does the right thing? And so I think 12 months from now, our platform will look very different, is our belief, is our hope, is our goal in terms of how we're working towards that. But I think I certainly am in the camp that feels like everything is going to change in terms of how we do stuff and how that stuff manifests. But there are some things that aren't going to change, right? I think our vision, I don't think that's going to change. I think friction is going to exist. I think consumers are going to want to shop. I certainly don't buy into there's ChatGPT has now Shopify snippets in there and add to cart and check out and buy now and all of that. And yes, I think buying from inside, a chat conversation will maybe become easier, but is everybody going to go, to ChatGPT and shop? I certainly don't think so. I think the joy of shopping is always going to be there, and given just how many different mediums of interactions exist, I think friction is going to continue to propagate and get harder. And so I think those things are still going to be a given. I also think the models are going to get easier. I think they're getting easier and better way faster than I thought they would. But I think that is the direction in which it's going to go. It is continuing to get commoditized. I think that the distribution you have, the access to proprietary data and context that you have, those are the things that are going to keep you relevant. And so when I think about our defensibility, our moat, it's how are we protecting those things? How are we continuing to scale and make sure that the distribution is something that we can start to bank on? And so just building on that, we think the price of software will continue to go down. And so you and I have talked about this before. We're pushing aggressively to say, how does our entry point for pricing get even lower? We talked about a free plan earlier, but even for our paid plans, we're trying to bring that entry point down and instead align a lot of our pricing to value that we drive, to outcomes that we drive. And so the idea is, can we make our software accessible to more merchants by democratizing it even more and lowering that entry point? But then depending on how much they use it and how much value they get in terms of the outcomes, which AI has got to play a big part there, that's what dictates what actually it's going to cost them. And so I feel like that is the future. That is the direction in which we should be going. And the UX is a big part of that, but so is the data that's in there and what you do with the data. I think some of the opinions that are starting to come from folks that have been around the block, it's been fascinating learning, right? Like there's so many amazing perspectives that people are sharing. I think I've built a Twitter list of people that are whose take on AI and where things are headed. I really value, and it's given me a lot of food for thought. It's something that I think is forcing us to challenge some assumptions we've held on to in terms of how software should work and what it's supposed to do and what your used to believe that if there was a certain level of complexity that you navigated and how you built stuff, that was going to keep you safe. I think that's now history. And so we're having to reinvent why will we continue to be the best. And I think it sort of goes back to that customer experience point that we started with. I do feel like that is something that is going to hold us in good stead, is taking care of our customers and having that empathy. And so everything we're doing, we're pushing to strengthen that advantage, if you will. So can we talk to more customers, and how do we make that efficient, and how do we get more automated insights from those conversations? Because in the past it was, we would look through all of the tickets, we would look through all of the chats. Now we're getting much smarter about that. We're moving to Intercom, for example, as our customer insights platform. And so a lot of how we operate, I think, is also becoming very AI infused in how we think about it. And I think Dharmesh, I'm a big fan of Dharmesh and HubSpot and how he's positioning the whole shift of, it's not about reducing your workforce. You're not becoming more productive, more efficient so you can shrink your team. It's really more because there's so many unsolved problems that if each of you becomes, N times more productive, more efficient, you can now go after a much bigger set of problems. And that's awesome because your value as a company continues to grow. And I think that's the right way to look at it. I love Toby's memo. I think he's spot on. And I think it's awesome to see somebody that, well known and with that much credibility push for that as strongly as he's doing. It's making it easy for some of us to follow that lead and say, look, Shopify is doing it, and if we are so tied to Shopify, then we should be following those same guidelines and applying it to our context. And it's been I don't get as much resistance, to be honest, as I thought I would, because I think it's starting to become more and more obvious that is the direction.
I've never been happier as a history major and MBA and generally useless person to be in my 40s than like watching this happen, be like, I'm so far behind. But I'll be okay. Kurt, maybe jump in, and I mean, I've got 10 different places to go, but I was thinking, I don't know if you have any thoughts about Toby's memo. I'm also like very curious for where you think kind of the future of commerce is going, which is an unfair question, but like with everything that's changing and think about the customer journey, and you as a, the space as well as anybody. I'm curious for your thoughts.
It was kind of interesting to see everybody get, well, and by everybody, we mean, people posting on Twitter and LinkedIn, but like getting really, really excited at the rumor that there's a Shopify ChatGPT integration, as if that was something particularly new, right? Perplexity does this. I mean, if you look at Perplexity, if you search for a product, and I use Perplexity instead of Google a lot on mobile, weirdly. I don't do it on desktop. But it'll pull in product. Like if you ask it, like, hey, what's the best air fryer? It'll pull in products and offer them to you to purchase through Shop. And like, nobody freaked out about that, right? Like, did you even know it did that? Yeah,
Exactly.
it does. Yeah. It's a ChatGPT. It's like, when you ask it to research something, it'll cite its sources. If it could link to a Shopify store now, I'm just not really seeing like what we're so excited about there.
Yeah.
Do you think the like journey is going to change, and maybe it's better discovery in the future, or it's more like personalization? And I can give some context on what I mean. Orita helps people with like get in the inbox. So don't be annoying. You send too many emails. We'll tell you when Kurt wants to hear from you, right? Like that's what we do. But every investor lumps us in with like Gen AI, like creating personalization. We're like, no. Like there's amazing tools that are coming to like in a year, the CEO of Nike is going to send Kurt a voice memo that says like, Kurt, it's CEO of Nike. Like you looked at her shoes 6 months ago, right? And it's going to feel very personalized. Do you think that like personalization is going to change, or like discovery is going to change, or I don't know. I'm curious, like, and then how does that impact as you're thinking about building your agency for the future, or like, thinking about this ecosystem for the future?
I've been hearing that personalization is the next big thing for e-commerce for the last decade. And okay, guys, it's been 10 years. Like, are we here yet? When's it happen? And it doesn't. It's beyond just like, you looked at this product. Here are related products. Cool. Perhaps the thing that changes and that we've seen change is discoverability. And in many ways, Google kind of forced that on us with its AI overviews. Perplexity has taken market share, and I guess some people ask ChatGPT as their form of discoverability. So maybe, right? But we've also seen that result in increased Google organic search. And we thought 6 months ago, people were like, this is the death of Google search. And it turns out it wasn't the case. As far as anxiety around it, or like moving forward, and how do you adapt? I think the best thing anyone could do is use the tools, stay on top of the tools. And the reality is like you don't have to chase every single thing. I like a few, like Ben's Bites as an AI newsletter, so I'll subscribe to newsletters. most AI apps and tools, they're just built on top of ChatGPT to begin with. So like if you could use, this one core tool that powers all these other things, you're like Shopify Sidekick. Guess what? You're talking to ChatGPT's API with that, right? So if you could start with that core tool and understand it, then I think you have a lot less anxiety about the world passing you by with these AI tools. I think most of them are just like nonsense wrappers around ChatGPT.
Arvind, any thoughts?
I mean, I think, are things going to become more efficient? No question, right? Like, I think we all experience it. We all are starting to use different facets of, what AI can help us with in our day to day, and we certainly see the value. Um, but I also feel like equating shopping with just an efficiency exercise is just fundamentally flawed. Like the joy of shopping, I think people want to spend time, browsing products and thinking about them and comparing, etc. Right? Like not always are they looking for, hey, AI just tell me which one I should buy is not exactly what they're after. At least in the B2C world. In the B2B case, where it's more, task completion in some sense, yes, I can see that the case for AI is much more pertinent, and I do see that a lot of the processes today that are maybe less efficient than they should be, those become very disrupted, and so B2B commerce I can see start to become much more agentic, because I also think of it as just it's more work, right, and less shopping as entertainment or a consumer activity. But I think it's in terms of just how hard it is to change habits. I think classic, we keep underestimating how much that takes. And I still remember when Instagram started allowing purchases off of Instagram. People said, "Oh, this is the future of commerce," and like the storefronts are gone and the browser is gone. And I think the browser is still very much around. Like I don't think it's gone anywhere. So to Kurt's point, I think these things are going to improve how we do things today, but are they going to completely render everything that's relevant today history? No, I don't think that's true either.
Guys, we have a couple minutes left. I have one more question that is going to be a complete, I don't know if it's a left turn or right turn. I'm not good at phrasing. Kurt, you'll have to give me tips on how to do this better. But just one question that I'm curious for your opinions. And if you don't have a strong one, feel free to skip. And then I want to wrap up with any last words and obviously where folks can find you. My question is, because hopefully a lot of merchants will see this, right? A lot of brand owners. You have a best friend who is like starting a brand. What are the core metrics that you tell them to pay attention to? If you think about the best merchants or the best retailers, best brands in your network, like what are they obsessing over when they look at their business? Is it just top line sales? Is it profitability? Something to do with them? And yeah, I don't know. Kurt, I want to start with you.
The sophisticated ones always know what their unit economics are. If I make a sale, how much of that was profitable? What was my cost of goods sold? So the ones that really have that dialed in, the advantage to that is they are so much more comfortable in budgeting, in their ad spend, in knowing what levers to try and pull. So that like that becomes their North Star. And then, from there, for me, for someone who just lives in online stores, then it's all right, just a simple formula of traffic times conversion rate times average order value. That's going to give us our end top line revenue result. And so between those two things, all right, what can we do? And I think the other thing that new people don't necessarily know to look for is quality of traffic, right? Not all traffic is made alike, and you'll see this where a site has modest traffic and a high conversion rate, and then we have some breakthrough with our sales funnel, and now we have way more traffic, but we're not making any more money. Conversion rate tanked, and often it's like, well, because you got the wrong traffic. So, but quality of traffic, it's tough to assign a metric to that.
What are some places that people assume will be really useful traffic or like experimentation that they're going to do where they're going to see a bump or it's maybe slightly less quality? Or is it like truly brand dependent?
It's so brand dependent. I think a lot of times it's just like dumping money into the wrong ad creative or, I mean, you have to test and tune. with performance marketing.
Interesting. So it
There's just
doesn't
no way around it.
definitionally, you're not even saying like, hey, AdWords is working, but Instagram's not. It might even be AdWords is working, but now this new creative is bringing in the wrong traffic and they're not converting even within AdWords. Like it's within
Yeah.
channel. Interesting.
And so then you want to know, it's like, all right, of the purchases that we are making, okay, what is our traffic source that's working? What are our campaigns within that traffic source that is working? All right, we know for sure that these things are acquiring new customers. All right, let's double down on those. And so you want to take an 80-20 approach to it, where like we're always in an ideal world, 80% of my traffic is, the good traffic, and 20% is my experimentational traffic.
It's super helpful. Arvind, any quick metrics if you think about like the most sophisticated brand owners in your community, like on top of, like contribution margin or like actual unit economics stand out?
Well, I think this is a controversial one because I've seen different takes on this. I think lifetime value and the cost of acquiring that customer in comparison to that lifetime value, I think will continue to be relevant. I do feel like, especially as we think about the next few years, customer acquisition is going to change. I think the ad model is probably going to have to evolve. And I also think the generational shift to, and I'm maybe going to contradict myself from just a few minutes ago, maybe the browser is not the center of the shopping universe, 5 years from now, right? And I don't know what that new world looks like. But as that model evolves, I think we're going to have to figure out, there's a lot of assumptions that are built into the browser being the center of the universe today, and including a Shopify storefront. And as that world quickly changes, I think all of us are going to have to adapt, and and therefore the models that we use for pretty much any part of the customer journey today, they're also going to have to evolve. But I think in terms of your metric question, that I don't think is going to change. What it costs to acquire a customer and relative to the value that customer brings, I think is always going to be important, and that in turn I think is a good indicator of like the value and the experience that brand provides. And so the brands that we see as being consistently successful, at least the ones that we get to watch up close, and we pay a lot of attention to the customer journey because it's so central to what we do, are the ones where that brand experience, that brand identity is something that they care deeply about, and it consistently shows up in how they project themselves. They tend to do well, and I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I think it's a very thoughtful, deep strategy that I think serves them well.
Thank you. Arvind, I'm going to start with you to wrap. Can you just tell people where to find you, where to find Swym, spell it? Because, you have a Y in there, not an I.
Yeah, so Swym is SWYM. It's actually an acronym for Shop with Your Mobile is how it got started. And now, of course, mobile is everywhere, so we don't talk about the acronym anymore, but Swym is how we're known. I'm quite active on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And Twitter, my handle is Arvind with an AX at the end. And then LinkedIn, of course, you can find me through Swym.
Cool. Thank you. Kurt, I want you to wrap up and share where people can find you. If you have any last words of wisdom for somebody building in Shopify, you're welcome to share it, but you can also just say, listen to my podcast and, smash subscribe, etc.
My parting wisdom is, if you build it, they will come is the greatest lie ever told, right? You absolutely, we're not at a dinner party. You don't have to be polite. You absolutely need to be marketing yourself, be much less humble and modest than I am. Shout it from the rooftops. And then, once you've done that for 6 months straight, screaming into the void, someone might notice, right? Let's reset our expectations here and get some people marketing more. As far as me, to find me is easy. Google Kurt Elster, check out kurtelster.com. I've got, links to everything there. Agency, podcast, the Unofficial Shopify Podcast, and of course, social stuff. I'm most active Twitter and LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you both. Arvind, I really appreciate all the advice and wisdom and friendship over the years. Kurt, thank you. Wisdom from afar, but I'm glad that we've actually got to spend some more meaningful time together.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. This was fun. Thank you for bringing us together.